Well, I can't believe I've been sitting on these photos now for more than 7 years. These are the final pictures I ever took at Candlestick Park back in December of 2013. The 49ers had just played their last regular season game, and as I scan through here, I think there's about 50 photos behind the scenes in total. I'm also going to share some tidbits that maybe you weren't even aware of about Candlestick Park, but as I go through all this and recite all of this, it's hard to believe that none of this even exists anymore. Now, I was in the parking lot here, approaching the structure, trying to get all the, scenic shots and things that reminded me of the stick over the years. And certainly this is a place that changed. It was built as, kind of a half stadium, then fully enclosed. Eventually, the Giants came in there, as well as the 49ers and so many other events over the years. But again, I wanted to capture these photos for the personal album. Glad I now have the chance to share them here in a YouTube video. Things like the escalators that brought you up to that upper concourse level. I mean, that is just a design and probably not an idea that will ever be replicated again for obvious reasons. The escalator, there it is right there, has to go up to bring fans into the game. And then afterwards, halfway through a baseball game or a football game, it would switch and go down. And what happens if you had to go the opposite direction? I mean, that just does not seem efficient. They did break at times. It's just so narrow. And yeah, again, that was unique. That was something I'm not sure we'll ever see again. Our tour of the stick on this December day back in 2013, it started in the 49ers locker room. And you can see some of the signs here in the player parking lot. It was also used in the Giants area as well, too. By the way, did you know, tidbit number 1 here, Candlestick Park was actually first known as Harney Stadium from 1956 to 59. Charles Harney was owner of that land, and so before it was ever even called Candlestick or 3Com or Monster Park, it was actually called Harney Stadium. Important people park right outside the stadium, like, for example, Jed York, CEO of the 49ers, but I'm pretty sure, and I'm not positive, but I would estimate that Jed York was not driving a Ford F-150 on this day. Yet somebody's parking in Jed York's spot. You can also see down the line Trent Baalke, at that time the general manager, and even Jim Harbaugh, at that time the head coach. Their parking spots were nearby. Now we're inside the 49ers locker room at Candlestick Park, and really there was, nothing special or elaborate about it. And especially when you look at, NFL stadiums and facilities here in 2021, I mean, they are impressive in the new varieties, but, this one with the frame pictures, and yes, Steve Young, Y.A. Tittle, and John Brody, all quarterbacks, and that middle one, yes, is my namesake, in case you weren't aware of that. I was named after John Brody, but their jerseys hung framed inside the 49ers locker room at Candlestick Park, and then, yeah, just the bare bones. I mean, you would see something like this in a high school football locker room, but this is the NFL, and this is the kind of stuff that you would see at Candlestick Park. Eventually, as you're going to see here, the 49ers expanded their locker room facilities into the Giants area once they vacated after the late 90s. So you'll see some more space. I mean, there was definitely space, but in terms of, accommodations, like this is the training table. And I'm not saying you need anything fancy for your training table, but look at that thing. I mean, that's from the 60s. And that was still there in use. It was just used in 2013 for the final 49er games. Pretty standard stuff as you would exit a locker room of any pro sports league, all the notes and news pertinent from the respective leagues, like how to wear your jerseys, equipment that's approved for on-field use, all that kind of stuff. So that was all normal to see. And then this is the area, like I said, where at some point the 49ers also took over the Giants space to give themselves a lot more room. So what they lacked in style and modern amenities they had in space, at least. There was definitely no shortage of space for the 49ers. Now this is on the other side. This is the visiting locker room / clubhouse at Candlestick Park. And there's a lot less space and there's a lot less inspiration, I would say, in this area. Just very bare bones. And for professional teams, here in, the 2020s, they're used to a lot different setup and look than this right here. So there you go. I got a lot more tidbits, and I'm going to get to those as soon as we get out on the field. But first, just a couple more looks inside the visiting locker room and clubhouse area. Now, I thought this was pretty cool. All the visiting clubs and teams over the years, baseball, football, and otherwise, even college, you see Cal on there, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes. They would leave a sticker here on one of the cabinet facilities, just kind of a marking of their territory, so to speak, that they were there. Now, I'm not sure how the San Jose Sharks sticker got there. The other ones all make sense. Over time, well, actually, Miami, I'm not sure how that one got there either. But yeah, stickers were placed kind of as a memento of a certain time. All right, now we're exiting the 49ers locker room facility. We're heading out to the field, and to get there, it's a narrow, tight little hallway. And you think about an entire football team or even a baseball team going in and out here. This is not the most spacious or airy corridor of a pro sports stadium. And I do have to say, think about this. Think about October 17th, 1989, when the Loma Prieta earthquake hit and A's and Giants players were in a tunnel just like this. Imagine being in that tunnel below a stadium when the earthquake hits. Not a pleasing thought, to say the least. You see the plaque here of Bill Walsh Field that was commemorated in late 2007. Now, this is right outside of the dugout area that never really got taken away from Candlestick Park. They kind of converted it for football use. But the photo there of Bill Walsh and the plaque to commemorate it. And yeah, this is one of the two dugouts that still existed to the very end of Candlestick. And they didn't try and hide it. They didn't try and alter it a whole lot. They just tried to make an on-field fan experience. And if I recall correctly, this was especially popular during warm-ups for the NFL season, that you could invite extra people down here and they could kind of have that on-field perspective of getting ready. And yeah, over the years, especially after the Giants left and moved to then Pac Bell Park in 2000, the 49ers were able to kind of take this stadium and make it their own. More tributes to Montana and Young and Brody. I thought that was very cool. And now we're on the field. And by the way, tidbit number 2, I've got 10 of these, so I better hustle through them. Did you know that, and I didn't even remember this, all the time in all the years, I always remember Candlestick as being a natural grass facility. But did you know it was Astroturf for 1970 to 1978 for 8 years? I mean, it was before the time I was born, so I don't remember that through experience, but that's interesting that it was AstroTurf for that long. Did you also know, while I'm here doing this, that Richard Nixon threw out the very first ceremonial first pitch for the Giants in the 1960 season of Candlestick Park? That is quite the famous/infamous piece of history, that Richard Nixon was the first person to throw out a ceremonial first pitch on the field. And I know these are the sites that, Giants and 49ers fans remember from what Candlestick looked like. Oh, yeah, opportune time for a selfie back then in 2013. Kind of look a little bit different here and now in early 2021. Did you also know, and this is a trip too, I'm not sure everybody was aware of this, that before the 49ers even moved in there in 1971, that the Oakland Raiders actually played games first at Candlestick Park in the 1960 and 61 seasons, right? While the 49ers were over at Kezar. That's just something that not everybody knew or I think expected. So I'll move through some of the photos here, and I think looking back on this final season at the Stick, they did a great job of commemorating it, of making sure that you knew this was the last season in such a historic venue for this team, a storied venue for the team, and all the memories and all the championships and success that came at Candlestick Park. And I'll just take this here full screen for a second. Yeah, farewell Candlestick Park. That's just, they had that type of signage up around the whole place, and I think it made it a special environment for that final season of football. Another one to share with you here. This photo is of the exact spot, not only in the proper end zone, but the exact spot where Dwight Clark made the catch as thrown by Joe Montana against the Dallas Cowboys in that championship game. And that's just such an iconic, like who else would know why that media group is congregating there? But if you're of a significant age and a football fan, you know exactly, and that camera view right there, just kind of seeing the background, you know exactly what that spot is. And speaking of big games at Candlestick Park, did you actually know that in 1999, it was all set to host Super Bowl 33? But it got taken away by the NFL a couple years prior because there were supposed to be improvements made to Candlestick Park in the mid to late 90s, and because they never took place, the NFL actually rescinded Candlestick from hosting that Super Bowl in 1999. So Super Bowl 33, I think it went to Miami. It was originally supposed to be held right there at the Stick. There's another look at what would have been left field, left center field, maybe looking back towards home plate if it were baseball season. But in reality here, the north end zone looking back to the south end zone. I'll make note here of the press box, which you can plainly see, as well as all those big light standards. By the way, what I had heard on this tour, those light standards at Candlestick Park were among the tallest in all of North America for pro sports venues. So I don't know why they needed to be that tall. They just were. But that press box was way up there. There was one elevator to get there. And that thing, when the sun was hitting, for the football press box, when the sun was hitting the right way, it was very much like a greenhouse up there. Not a whole lot of air circulation, shall we say. And then this is the eastern side of the stadium, and all of this, it became permanent seating, but it was that temporary seating. If a baseball game was to be played here, all of this got taken out, and it kind of got stuffed under the second level to make a right field pavilion area for Giants baseball games. But, it was, more permanent in the final years because the 49ers spent more than a decade playing here all by themselves after the Giants moved out. Did you know, by the way, that there was only one college football game ever played in the history of Candlestick Park? Just one. All those years, more than 50 years of existence, and it wasn't until 2011 when Cal played Fresno State that it had ever hosted a college football game before. And the only reason that Cal played there is because Memorial Stadium in Berkeley was under construction and renovation, and they were playing their other games at, was it called AT&T Park back then, or SBC Park? They were playing at the baseball stadium in San Francisco, but it couldn't be used because of baseball season on that given Saturday. So Cal played Fresno State in 2011, the only college football game ever at Candlestick Park. There's another cool view looking west, and I always thought it was neat that kind of tree area just perched over the top of the stadium. Like, where else do you ever really see that kind of natural look anymore in some of the new modern stadiums? There was a huge hill on this side. And again, it's weird to say it because all this has been gutted. None of this even exists anymore. But there was that huge hill and those trees atop that could always be seen from various spots inside the stadium. Was it beat up over more than 50 years of use? Yeah. I mean, this place was either in need of a serious overhaul, which didn't seem reasonable back then, or in this case, the demolition which it ultimately faced. And yeah, I mean, you could see generations and generations, and those were not comfortable seats to sit in. And that's why the stadium doesn't exist anymore. Hey, there's yours truly again. Do I have another tidbit for you here? Yes. Number 7. This was the first pro stadium, Candlestick Park, the first pro stadium across North America that was entirely built of reinforced concrete. So in a way, when it came to be in the late 50s and early 60s, it was the first of its kind. It's just that that's such commonplace now that you would never remember what exactly was the first, but indeed, it was Candlestick Park. So now we're making our way here through the tour and getting to see some kind of behind-the-scenes areas. This is that right field pavilion I was talking about. Those are the temporary seats that you would have seen on the eastern sideline of the football field. All those get stuffed in down here for baseball action. So this was kind of an open and empty spot for football season. And I want to point out, too, what's interesting, the Giants left in the late 90s, but this scoreboard, this out-of-town scoreboard right here, and even with the old Giants logo on it, it remained intact at Candlestick Park until the very end. And I'm not here to say that's because anybody thought that there would ever be another baseball game played there, but maybe it was just cheaper and easier to leave that there. Nobody would ever see this sign because, as you can clearly tell, there's seats right in front of it. So maybe it was just easier to leave there. But it's kind of crazy how that was kind of coffined in the stadium over the final years of its existence, and nobody ever really knew that it was there. All right, I want to show you this. This was the mechanical structure that helped pull the stadium seats, those temporary seats, in and out. And if you're telling me that in 2013 that right there was still operational, I'd have a hard time believing it. I'm pretty sure that stopped working as soon as it ever stopped being used in the early 2000s, maybe even the late 90s. But again, that's the kind of infrastructure that was underneath those temporary seats. And I mean, look at what is growing right there. A lot. And look, this is not, unsafe. It's unsightly, I suppose. And you would not really see this in a lot of other professional stadiums around, North America here in 2020. But this is days removed from the final NFL game at Candlestick Park. And this is what's going on under those seating areas on the eastern side of the field. So, again, they kind of knew the facility was going to meet its doom and its eventual demise. They took care of it as well as they needed to. But yeah, this is stuff that most people never really got to see. And this perspective right here, as we're making our way up to the press box, those steel beams that are obstructing of a view that exist right here, this is something you'll never see. I don't think in stadiums moving forward, whether it's because they're able to design them better now and still provide the overhang, or if it's just so unsightly that they'll never ever use it. Because yes, some views are obstructed by these poles right here. Now, I do appreciate the fact that the second deck at Candlestick was a lot closer to the field than, let's say, the design currently of like the Oakland Coliseum, which is more spaced back and doesn't have these steel structures. But yeah, again, this is kind of a dated thing that I don't know that you'll ever see again. I also don't know that you'll ever see something like doors. This is a view from the concourse out to one of the seating aisles. I mean, whoever wants to close off the structure like that? If anything, stadiums in today's age, they want it to be more open. You want to be able to walk on the concourse and still be able to look down on the field if you're able to do so. So to think of doors and hallways and stuff like this, I mean, this will just never exist in newer sports venues. This is the very last row, which it does look like it was turned into handicap accessible area seating over the years. And again, though, kind of a cool spot, if you're sitting in that last row, kind of a cool vantage point because you feel totally, sheltered and maybe from the wind, it's less windy than it traditionally was at Candlestick Park. And by the way, did you know, another tidbit here, for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game of 1961, famously or actually infamously, a pitcher was actually blown off the mound by natural wind during that All-Star game, which does not come as a surprise to many of you who went to baseball games there or football games over the years, but especially baseball in the summer, especially in the evening, that wind got whipping. Here's the concourse area, which is probably more recognizable to a lot of fans. Again, not the widest area. Certainly doesn't help that all these concrete pillars are there to get in people's way. Enough concession stands, I think, suffice to say. Probably not enough bathrooms, but what stadium of that era ever did have enough bathrooms? There's a look up at one of those tallest light towers in North America ever constructed. And another fun fact here that is not on my list of tidbits, but there was a man that was actually going up to detangle a windsock during the 1989 World Series in the day of the earthquake on October 17th. This gentleman was climbing up the structure while the earthquake struck. And he tells the story of how the whole thing was swaying back and forth. And I don't know this for sure, but I remember hearing that he was not completely buckled in because he was only going up for a quick second. Think about that for just a second. All right, now we're going up the ramp here. We're eventually going to make it to the press box. And, this type of ramp up and down, still prevalent in modern stadiums, but just a lot wider. They want people to have space. That look right there of the stadium and kind of the curved top to it and the support beams, that was the signature of this stadium as you would see it from afar. You can see the seating diagram here and the different modifications. This is a football layout. Home plate would have been right here for baseball. Left field, there was a lot of extra space over the left field fence, and not a lot of space because all these seats would disappear for the right field area. And yeah, this stadium only began as kind of the baseball backdrop over here. Eventually, they made it completely enclosed over the years, as it looks right here. Now, this is the view from the press box, And yeah, you can tell there was just a lot of things done. This stadium was like piece by piece by piece. It wasn't designed at once and built all at once. There were several different phases of this. In fact, you can even see those unused seats right there. They'd be down the right field line for baseball, but for football, yeah, it's no point because you're behind that main grandstand right there. Press box all neatly put away. It would never be used again for an NFL game. And like I said before, a lot of glass, a lot of sunshine, and those fans up there would be cranking overtime. This was a tight space. And, the 49ers being a good team over the years, this press area quite full. And so you get as many people in there as possible. It was a busy and claustrophobic place if you ever got to experience it. And not the most high tech. I mean, they were using here the whiteboard to update other NFL scores here even in 2013. Again, all this stuff, even 7+ years later, it just looks dated. Now, getting to a little bit of history here, this was not a piece that suffered damage from the 1989 earthquake, but there were, general signs here and there of deterioration of the structure over the years. But this right here actually was damage caused by the 1989 earthquake. And you can see kind of that chunk missing out of that step right there and a little bit of rebar that went with it. Now, what's interesting, that gentleman right there, one of the employees and workers, one of the staff members at Candlestick Park, they took that piece of concrete and they commemorated it by putting it on that plaque, and they kept that thing. I think, yeah, there's a closer picture of it showing you that it was from the upper section 51 and 53, the time and date of the earthquake, and the fact that they kept that over the years. That is one of the main damage pieces, and really to say that's not a very big piece. That's the extent of the big damage that happened there, but that's something that they kept and hung on to over the years to remind them of October 17th, 1989. Why am I showing you a picture of a bench that used to sit outside Candlestick Park? As I zoom in here, you'll see the name Anthony Morabito. Now, Anthony Morabito was basically the main person who convinced the NFL to bring a football team out west to San Francisco. And what's crazy about this bench is that it actually sat at Kezar Stadium, where the 49ers first came when they were in San Francisco. Then they moved it to Candlestick Park. But my question here now in 2021 is, where is that bench? I mean, I'm almost positive that it didn't get destroyed. I would imagine it's in safekeeping somewhere. Will they ever do anything else with it? Maybe if the area of Candlestick Park is redone, will they find a nice landing spot for it? It's interesting. Where did that bench go? I don't know. And also, did anybody even notice it when it was at Candlestick Park? Notice the significance of a bench dedicated to the person who brought the NFL to San Francisco. And then lastly here, this plaque, which was part of the dedication there on April 12th of 1960 to commemorating Candlestick Park. And you can see some of the names on there. And it just, again, it's amazing to think and to know that none of this exists anymore. As I leave you here with these final two tidbits, we talk about the final 49er game that was held right before I took these photos in 2013, but Paul McCartney actually held the stadium's or hosted the stadium's final concert. That was August 14th of 2014, so well after the final football game. But that's kind of unique and special because did you know that the Beatles actually held their final public, full concert ever in San Francisco at Candlestick Park, August 29th of 1966. So kind of fitting that Paul McCartney helped close the place out entirely from a concert perspective, being that that's where the Beatles ever last played in public. So again, those are my about 50 photos from Candlestick Park. Hope you enjoyed that. And it's just, like I said, crazy to think and know that, number one, 7 years have passed since I took these photos, and that also none of this will ever exist again in real life, even though it very much exists still in our minds.